So the Caitlin Clark jersey retirement ceremony has created some of the funniest discourse. Honestly, it has created genuinely some of the funniest discourse on social media I've ever seen because obviously she's wearing number 22 and they have a game on 2.2 the 2nd of February. They're playing on the 2nd of February at home in Iowa. And honestly, their planning made perfect sense. Caitlin Clark, the face of college basketball, the record-breaking sensation, the player who's made women's basketball must-watch TV. Of course, they wanted to give her a send-off worthy of her impact. So obviously they're going to retire number 22's jersey on 2.2. They had planned this months, by the way, because they've had the jersey. People saw it in wherever Iowa played. They saw the jersey up there. So obviously it's going to be 2.2. Why wouldn't it be? They didn't just sell out, they exploded. But it just so happens that there is another number 22, and the way the WNBA media are sharing spotlights, viewership records, and now ticket price records. Meanwhile, down in South Carolina, a different celebration was being planned. The Gamecocks decided this would be the perfect time to honor one of their greatest players ever, Aya Wilson. Now, Wilson's legacy is undeniable. We're talking about an Olympic gold medalist, WNBA MVP, and one of the most dominant players in basketball. South Carolina had been waiting to retire her number 22 jersey, and they too chose February 2nd. The first post: why the F would y'all retire her jersey the same day as Aya? Why would they retire? Because they both wore number 22. The contrast in ticket prices was striking. While Iowa fans were shelling out thousands, tickets for Wilson's ceremony were going for $64. This price difference would later become a major talking point in the brewing controversy, with both sides using it to support their arguments. What makes this situation particularly interesting is the timing. South Carolina's announcement came after Iowa had already made their plans public. The university had every right to choose any date they wanted. After all, Wilson is their legend, their champion, their hometown hero. But the choice of the same date as Clark's ceremony immediately raised eyebrows across the basketball world. The reaction was almost immediate. Basketball fans noticed the overlap within minutes of South Carolina's announcement. At first, it was just curious observations. Then came the questions. Then came the theories. And finally, the floodgates opened. What many people forget is that both universities had perfectly valid reasons for choosing this date. Iowa wanted to capitalize on the symbolism of 2-2 for their number 22. South Carolina wanted to honor Wilson during a home game in a month when the WNBA star could attend. Both decisions made sense in isolation. But together, they created a perfect storm. Adding fuel to the fire was the fact that this wasn't just about two ceremonies happening on the same day. This was about two different eras of women's basketball colliding. Wilson represents the established greatness, the proven champion who's already achieved everything at every level. Clark represents the new wave, the social media sensation who's bringing unprecedented attention to the women's game. The scheduling conflict touched on deeper issues within women's basketball. Questions about respect for the game's history versus embracing its future. Debates about traditional success versus modern popularity. Discussions about how we honor our athletes and who gets to decide when and how we celebrate them. What's truly fascinating is how a simple scheduling coincidence transformed into a narrative on the state of women's basketball. Every detail became scrutinized. The timing of the announcements, the ticket prices, the media coverage, the social media reactions. Everything became part of a larger narrative about respect, recognition, and the future of the sport. Lost in all of this was a simple truth. Both Clark and Wilson deserved their moments. Both had earned the right to have their numbers retired. Both had made incredible contributions to the game. But in the age of social media and instant reactions, having these celebrations on the same day wasn't just a coincidence. It was an invitation to controversy. As the news spread and the debate intensified, what should have been a day of celebration for both players was starting to look more like a battlefield for their respective fan bases. And this was just the beginning. The real fireworks were yet to come as social media was about to turn this situation into one of the biggest basketball controversies of 2024. The moment South Carolina announced their date for Wilson's jersey retirement, basketball Twitter turned into absolute chaos. It wasn't just fans arguing. We're talking about basketball analysts, former players, journalists, and even casual fans all jumping into what became the most heated basketball debate of 2024. Let's start with the initial reactions. Some called it disrespectful. Others called it a deliberate attempt to overshadow Wilson's moment. But Clark supporters came with receipts. They pointed out that Iowa had planned this date months in advance. Some even shared screenshots of Clark's jersey already hanging in Iowa's arena from early season games. Their argument was simple. Iowa picked 2-2 because it matches Clark's number 22. It wasn't about disrespect. It was about symbolism. The debate got even more heated when people started comparing ticket prices. One viral tweet read, "Tickets to see Caitlin's jersey retirement, $1,000. Tickets to see Aya's jersey retirement, $64. Make it make sense." This price comparison became a lightning rod for both sides. Wilson supporters used it as evidence of disrespect towards the WNBA star. If you like the video, then give it a like and also subscribe to the channel. Clark's fans saw it as proof of their player's unprecedented impact on the game's popularity. Then came the geography arguments. As one viral tweet pointed out, other side of the country, 2 different arenas, why would it make any difference? It was a fair point. The ceremonies were happening over 1,000 miles apart. But in the age of social media, physical distance doesn't matter much when you're fighting for attention and headlines. The irony that really got people talking was how many of Wilson's supporters claimed they don't even watch Caitlin Clark while simultaneously tweeting about her nonstop. As one user pointed out, "Y'all swear you don't care about Caitlin Clark, but can't stop talking about her. Make it make sense." The debate took an interesting turn when basketball historians entered the chat. They reminded everyone that neither Clark nor Wilson was the first legendary player to wear number 22. Veterans of the game brought up Christy Sides and Stephanie White, who wore the number at Purdue. This historical perspective added another layer to the respect argument, with some asking why we weren't talking about these pioneers. But perhaps the most telling aspect of this social media meltdown was what people were predicting would happen on February 2nd. As one viral tweet suggested, instead of celebrating Aya, they're going to spend the whole ceremony talking about Caitlin Clark. Others predicted that Wilson would address the controversy during her ceremony, adding even more fuel to the fire. The discourse got so intense that even media personalities who usually stay away from controversy felt compelled to weigh in. Some called for unity, suggesting that having 2 number 22 jerseys retired on February 2nd could be seen as a beautiful coincidence, celebrating women's basketball. Others saw it as a missed opportunity for the sport to showcase its stars on separate days. What made this social media storm particularly fascinating was how it exposed the deeper divisions within women's basketball fandom. It wasn't just about 2 ceremonies happening on the same day. It became about old school versus new school, traditional success versus modern popularity, and how we measure greatness in women's basketball. Some of the tweets became instant classics. "You can't expect them to wait till February 22nd to retire it," one user sarcastically wrote, while another responded, "You can't expect respect from college or W when it comes to respecting those who came before." The back and forth was endless, with each side becoming more entrenched in their position. As the debate raged on, something interesting happened. The controversy actually increased interest in both ceremonies. Media outlets that might have only covered one event were now planning to cover both. The rivalry created by social media had inadvertently given both ceremonies more attention than they might have received separately. But the real question remained. Would this social media meltdown affect the ceremonies themselves? Would what started as a Twitter debate spill over into the real world? And most importantly, how would Wilson and Clark handle being unwittingly pitted against each other by their passionate fan bases? The answer to these questions would come on February 2nd. But one thing was already clear. What should have been a simple celebration of 2 basketball greats had turned into something much bigger thanks to the amplifying power of social media. And as we'll see in our next chapter, this controversy would end up saying more about the state of women's basketball than anyone could have predicted. What started as a scheduling coincidence has revealed something fascinating about women's basketball in 2024. It's not just about 2 ceremonies happening on the same day. It's about how the sport has evolved, where it's heading, and the growing pains that come with unprecedented growth. Let's step back for a moment and look at what Caitlin Clark and Aya Wilson represent. Wilson is the epitome of traditional basketball excellence, Olympic gold medalist, WNBA MVP, NCAA champion. She's done it all. She represents the established path to greatness, the kind of success that basketball purists respect and admire. Her impact on the game is undeniable, having helped turn South Carolina into a powerhouse program under Dawn Staley. Then there's Caitlin Clark, who represents something entirely different. She's not just a basketball player, she's a cultural phenomenon. Her logo threes, no-look passes, and record-breaking performances have made her must-see TV. She's bringing new fans to women's basketball, selling out arenas, and generating viewership numbers that were unthinkable just a few years ago. Just look at the ticket prices for her jersey retirement, $1,000 in a college arena. But here's where things get interesting. This jersey retirement controversy has exposed a divide in how different generations of fans view success in women's basketball. The old school emphasizes championships, individual awards, and traditional metrics of success. The new school points to cultural impact, social media influence, and the ability to grow the game's popularity. Some critics have dismissed Clark's impact, saying, "She's nothing special. All she does is hit logo threes and pass the ball." But as many have pointed out, if any point guard could do what she does, why haven't they? The reality is that both Clark and Wilson have changed the game in their own unique ways. The scheduling conflict has also highlighted how women's basketball handles its biggest moments. Should major celebrations be coordinated to avoid overlap? Should there be more communication between programs? Or is this kind of conflict inevitable as the sport continues to grow and create more memorable moments worth celebrating? What's particularly ironic about this whole situation is that both Clark and Wilson have expressed nothing but respect for each other in their public comments. The drama exists almost entirely among their fan bases. It's a perfect example of how social media can create controversy where the actual participants see none. The ticket price disparity between the two events has become a talking point, but it actually tells us something important about the state of women's basketball. The fact that a college jersey retirement ceremony can command NBA playoff prices shows how far the sport has come. At the same time, the more modest prices for Wilson's ceremony reflect the ongoing challenge of properly valuing women's basketball achievements. Here's another layer to consider. Both ceremonies being on February 2nd could actually be seen as poetic. Two number 22s being honored on February 2nd in different parts of the country could have been celebrated as a special day for women's basketball. Instead, social media turned it into a competition that nobody asked for. This controversy has also sparked important discussions about how we honor the game's history. Some have pointed out that before Wilson, before Clark, players like Christie Sides wore number 22 with distinction. It raises questions about how we remember and celebrate the pioneers who paved the way for today's stars. Looking ahead to February 2nd, both ceremonies will likely be memorable for different reasons. In Iowa, they'll celebrate a player who brought unprecedented attention to women's college basketball. In South Carolina, they'll honor a hometown hero who reached the pinnacle of the sport. Both celebrations are valid, both are deserved, and both tell important stories about women's basketball. Perhaps the most significant takeaway from this controversy is that women's basketball is big enough for multiple stars, multiple celebrations, and multiple ways of impacting the game. The sport is growing, evolving, and creating new kinds of stars alongside traditional champions. The real shame would be if the social media drama overshadowed what should be a great day for women's basketball. Two incredible players, two storied programs, two well-deserved celebrations. That should be the story. Instead of arguing about who deserves the date more, maybe we should be celebrating the fact that women's basketball has reached a point where such celebrations can command this much attention. Thanks for watching and subscribe my channel.